Did you ever wonder what this GPT stands for in ChatGPT, the name of this most famous AI chatbot? So in this video, I'll explain how these generative pre-trained transformers or GPTs work. I'll also explain why these GPTs actually kicked off this AI revolution that happened in 2022. I'll also explain how these neural networks work because they're the basis upon which large language models are built. And then I'll show you what are some most common risks related to GPTs and neural networks. And I'll also show you where you can find a free course that will teach you how to build AI governance. And basically AI governance is really about resolving these risks that I'll mention in this video today. So after you watch this video, you'll have a clear idea on how these GPTs work and how to build AI governance for them. Okay, let's first explore the concepts behind this G and P and T. So this G stands for generative, which means that GPTs are actually generating new text, and they are doing this by predicting actually the most likely next token based on previous tokens. Now, I'll explain what the tokens are in a minute, but the important thing is here that GPTs are not actually searching through a database for certain facts. Rather, they are actually predicting the most likely next word, or let's say next answer based on text or tokens that they generated previously. This P stands for pre-trained. This means that the GPT actually learns these general language patterns based on a huge amount of data. And this is basically when you hear that, ChatGPT was trained on, a huge amount of websites or, books or something like this. This is basically what happens, right? This is where actually all of this data is uploaded to servers, and then they basically learn upon all of this knowledge. And this T stands for transformer. And basically this is a neural network that is designed specifically to actually handle these larger contexts, meaning that it can take into account lots of these tokens up front and then generate the next most likely token. And I'll come back to this neural networks concept in a minute or two in this video. Now, how these transformers work, so they take a certain amount of text and then they break it down into tokens. And tokens are actually parts of the words. So if you have a word of, let's say, 10 letters, then this is probably going to be 3 or 4 tokens. And then these transformers use this concept called attention to focus on particular earlier tokens so that they can actually generate the most likely next token. And basically these tokens are simply smaller parts of the text that actually GPT reads and then generates one at a time. Now, why don't these GPTs actually use the whole words rather than these tokens, so only parts of the words? The reason is actually that it's easier for a machine to actually learn and understand because they don't have to learn the whole words, they only will learn parts of these words, and then they find easily, let's say, mistakes in grammar, or they can more easily translate one language to another. And just to mention that GPT started as a text-only model, but nowadays it can actually also handle videos and audios and all the other formats. But again, all of these formats are actually then converted into tokens. So again, these tokens are actually at the heart of GPTs. Now, GPTs are only one type of machine learning. There are other types like supervised learning, unsupervised learning, reinforced learning. But GPTs differ from those other types of machine learning because GPTs can generate text. Whereas all these other types of machine learning can, let's say, predict, classify, score, or do similar other activities. And transformers were actually first introduced in 2017 by Google, and then a year later, in 2018, OpenAI, the company that is now behind ChatGPT, launched its first GPT-1 based on this transformer technology. And then throughout years, OpenAI perfected this GPT, and in 2022 came to a version 3.5. And then in November 2022, they decided actually to build this nice user interface called ChatGPT, where actually the users can start talking to this GPT 3.5. And basically the rest is history, right? So this combination of a transformer that can actually create text, in other words, that can speak to you, and a nice user interface is what made this ChatGPT so famous. Now let's speak a little bit about neural networks. As I mentioned, transformers are a specific type of neural network where these neurons are organized in such a way that the network decides which inputs are the most important and which ones to focus on, rather than processing all the information, step by step. And these neurons are a basic processing unit of a neural network. So each neuron takes these inputs, then applies certain weights, and then decides how strongly it needs to actually forward this signal to the next layer. So let me give you an example on how this works. Let's say that you have a sentence and it goes like this. The meeting was postponed because the CEO was... and then you're missing the last word. And then what happens, GPT breaks these 7 or 8 words into, 30 or 40 tokens. And then all of these hundreds and thousands of neurons are starting to analyze this sentence, and they look for grammar, the tone, the context, some key words. And then GPT starts to understand that the keywords here are postponed and the word because. But there are also some less, let's say, important words like was or the. Now, whether CEO is important in this sentence or not, this is for discussion, but the point is that in this case, the GPT then comes with this last word, unavailable. So the meeting was postponed because the CEO was unavailable. Okay, now let's see what are some most common risks related to GPTs and neural networks. Hallucinations happen because these GPTs are designed to create the next token that is the most likely. They're actually not designed to verify the facts. Then a bias happens because GPTs reproduce the patterns that it has in this training data, and this training data very often reflects a human bias, and GPT doesn't judge what is fair or correct. Then privacy and data leakage risks happen because GPTs learn from huge amounts of data and then can reproduce some of the actually data that came from user inputs, because if GPT was trained on user inputs as well, then this is something that can surface as answers to some other users. And then lack of transparency basically happens because there are millions and billions of these parameters and neurons, and then it's extremely difficult to trace how GPT came actually to some kind of a conclusion or to some kind of an output. Of course, there are many other risks, but the key question here is how do we actually deal with these risks, especially if you have to deal with them in a systematic way. And one way to do it is to use this ISO 42001. This is an international standard for AI governance, and it explains actually how to perform this comprehensive risk assessment, where you actually uncover all of these potential bad things, and then gives you a catalog of controls that help you actually mitigate, if not all, then most of these risks. And I'll show you now how this free ISO 42001 Foundations course looks like. Okay, here you can see this ISO 42001 Foundations online course from Advisera. Here you have some general information, but more importantly, here you can actually sign up for the course for free, so you can actually go through all the videos for free, and you would have to pay this fee only if you actually go for the certification exam. Anyway, let's take a look at the curriculum, so which lessons are included. So in this module 1, you actually have this general things about the standard. So basically, how do you actually organize this artificial intelligence management system? Basically, this is AI governance, how to implement it, how to document it, these kind of things. But you also have some other explanations about AI terminology, machine learning, well, neural networks. This is very similar to this video that you've seen today. Main components of AI system lifecycle, these kind of things. And then module 2 actually starts explaining each and every clause of the standard. But more importantly is this module 3, which actually explains the details of how you actually assess these risks. How do you find out which potential risks can happen, and then how do you actually apply appropriate controls to decrease these risks. So basically this is about how do you set the process, how to write the methodology, how to identify, meaning how to list all the risks, then how to assess the impact and likelihood, how to find the right controls, and actually how you document these controls through this statement of applicability. And there is also a lesson about this AI system impact assessment. And then module 6 covers the controls that are listed in 42001 Annex A. There are 38 controls, and basically here you have an overview of all of these controls, and basically these controls are organized in these sections. So as you can see here, you have actually controls around how you assess the impact, what actually the management needs to do when AI systems are being developed. Then you have specific controls for each stage in the AI lifecycle, how you handle training data, how you handle interested parties, how you handle operational AI systems, and also how you handle customers and other third parties. Okay, I hope this was helpful, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about GPT or neural networks, and I'll respond as quick as I can. And to access this ISO 42001 Foundations course that I was showing you, click the link in the description below, and you'll be able to open this free student account where you can actually go through all the lessons, and as I mentioned, you would have to pay only if you want to go for the certification exam. And see also my next video, which explains in more detail how machine learning works. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel not to miss any of my new videos, and I publish videos about cybersecurity governance and AI governance every week. Thanks for watching.